Hey, Sean here for the Rusty Shovel, and in this video we're going to go through some troubleshooting of automatic sprinkler valves. So in the spring you go and get your system started up, or you've just installed it and you're not sure why it's not opening, letting water through, or why it's not closing. Could be the same issue, but here's kind of the troubleshooting tree to go through. So basically what we've got here is your solenoid. So two wires coming off the top. One's going to go to your common, one from each valve is going to go to your common, one's going to go to your zone. So that's going to be triggered by your controller. And so if your controller is, we just kind of got to eliminate things. So if we can make this valve go but not this valve, that probably means that the controller is working. You might have a bad terminal, so you could swap zone 1 and zone 2, those wires in the controller, and see if the problem stays the same or if it jumps. But usually it's not going to be with the controller if it's triggering at least one valve. So then what we want to check is whether we have a good manual connection. Sometimes over the winter you can have a maybe your common wire came undone or something shifted or that sort of thing in the physical connection to the wires on top of these. So just want to make sure that you have a good physical connection on all your wire connections. If all that's good, what you can do is check to see if your solenoid is still good. So what you can do is take this guy off. This solenoid is going to plunge up and down, so there's a little bit of a spring in there. And so if you take this solenoid out, leave it connected, just spin it off and leave it connected. If you run your controller and this guy sucks up, then it's probably not a problem with your solenoid. Same, while I've got this off here, you can see there's an on-off switch here, and there's a little stopper right there. What happens with that stopper sometimes, if you're getting just a little bit of a leak coming through the valve, sometimes these, there's a little, if I take this guy off, there's a little solenoid adapter on here. Sometimes that can be a little bit too loose. So what you can do is just take this off, turn it in the one direction, and make sure that it's snug. So in this case, this one is snug. So you're all good there. The next thing you can do is actually just take off the, so we want to get that back on tight. Whether these ones are jar top, these are a high drain valve, so this spins off. Sometimes there's screws, but you can take that off, pop this up. This just comes apart like this. Sometimes you can get a little bit of grit or dirt or something inside of there, so you just want to make sure the diaphragm is nice and clean. Once that's good, you can also look inside of there, make sure this little pin's not bent, make sure there's no rocks or gravel inside of there. So if all of those things are hunky-dory, sometimes you might just need to replace the valve, but sometimes you can get away with replacing components. So you might be able to, even if you buy a whole new valve, sometimes that's the best case scenario, is to buy an extra valve. Then you have one extra of every part. In worst case, if you have to replace the whole thing, you replace the whole thing. But you can just replace the diaphragm, you can replace just the solenoid here, and that's why we sell with these swivel connections as well, so that you can, in the ground, swivel this off, pop this up, spin a new valve on, bring it back down, away you go. So that's most of the issue. Sometimes you just do have to change out that valve. So if the sometimes you can also swap out. So if you're having a problem with this one not opening, if you take this solenoid off and swap these two, leaving the wires connected, but just swap the two solenoids, sometimes that will end up creating, you can just split test to see, does the problem stay with this valve with when the solenoid's swapped, Or is the problem now with this valve that you put the solenoid from the valve that wasn't working over here? That's usually your solenoid problem. So those are just a few of the things that you can go through with automatic sprinkler valves. Again, these are hydrorain valves, but very similar setup with any other types of automatic sprinkler valves that you find in your yard.